Hello, hello here, Jamie Trull, your favorite CPA and profit strategist. And we have reached one of my favorite points in the year. So I'm recording this in November. This video is going to be coming out in December, and we are walking into annual planning season. Yes. And if you're anything like me and you have about 1,000 different planners and various things all around you, I've got the highlighters. I am ready to go to get planning for next year for my business. But of course, we want to make sure that any time we spend planning is going to be effective time that's really going to help us. So this video today is going to be my top tips for how to set those annual financial goals for your business. So I'm going to give you 5 different things I recommend that you do and a free resource, of course, that will help you walk through all of those things. So real quick, if you want to grab our free annual planning guide that has been fully updated for this year, go to jamietrull.com/annual planner and snag your guide. So before we go all highlighter crazy, how do we set effective goals for our business, right? How do we set those annual financial goals? And I think so often we want to jump right into it and maybe go for those big picture goals, but we need to start somewhere else first. So my number one tip for going through the goal setting process for your business is to review last year's financial results first. Okay, I know you want to jump into the new year. It's more fun with that new year energy going on. I agree, but we are going to be much more effective and much more realistic and have a lot more information if we're giving ourselves the data of last year. And I don't mean that we should go into it and kind of pick ourselves apart that we didn't meet our goals for last year or the current year, depending on when you're doing this. But the reason I want you to do this is that all of that information is amazing data, right? It's not about being excited that we hit our goals or not excited that we didn't, or berating ourselves for not being where we wanted to be in our business in the current year. It is about being able to really use that information to make tweaks to get better. All of it is data, right? That's how we want to look at it. We don't just want to get our numbers together for taxes, although it will be really helpful for us if we get things organized ahead of tax time. But we want it because that's rich, important data when we're setting our new goals for this year. What types of things were our best sellers? What was most profitable in our business? Not just what brought in the most revenue, right? We want to be asking ourselves all of these questions and analyzing what happened so that we can make better plans for the future. Even if you had a great year, you could always improve somewhere. So using that data to really set those goals for next year is critical. And that's why in my free annual planning guide, that is the first thing we do is we review last year. So if you're not really sure what you should be looking at, then the guide is going to walk you through all of that. Now, the second thing that we need to do after we've reviewed last year is that we want to determine what our top priorities for the year are. Meaning we can't prioritize everything. If we do, then nothing is prioritized. Priorities mean that something is in front of something else. And so if we're trying to chase all of these different outcomes, we're not going to get to any of them. So we have to decide in this year, right? What are my biggest priorities? And some of that will come out of the biggest pain points maybe from the year before, right? Things that you maybe want to change. So are you going to prioritize paying off debt that maybe you have? Are you going to prioritize growing a team? Maybe you're feeling just strained that so much work is falling on your own shoulders and you need to be outsourcing things. Maybe you really just want to be able to grow the amount that you can pay yourself from your business. So those are all really great goals, but they're going to be hard to reach all at once, right? You might say, I want to do all of those things, but if you're wanting to pay yourself more, but also hire people and also pay off debt, well, it's going to be difficult to reach all of those goals. So something has to be most important, right? And what you deem as most important is going to be informing the business decisions you make. So that's why it's important to be both looking short-term and long-term, right? We may want to squeeze as much money out of our business as possible in the short term, but that could actually hurt us in the long term if it means that we're not hiring the people that we need. We're not building the processes and investing into our business in the way that we need to be sustainable in the long term. So that's why it's really important that we determine those priorities, and they're going to be different for everyone. And then the third thing that I want you to do is to set profit goals, not just revenue. It is very easy to set revenue goals, right? That's the top line number, the amount of sales that we are going to make. That is sometimes most exciting to us. Those are sometimes vanity metrics, especially if we're saying, well, we're going to shoot for $1 million this year. Those are just vanity numbers though, because you can make $1 million in revenue and make nothing or very little in profit and not be able to pay yourself. Believe me, I know a lot of businesses that run this way. So don't make your goals on revenue only. In fact, the best way to do it is to determine, here's what I want my profit to be, and then back into what that means for your revenue. How much revenue would you need to make in order to profit that particular amount, right? And obviously that takes really diving into the numbers. So it's not as fun. We're not just sitting in the pie in the sky. I would love to make X amount of dollars. We are creating the plan that would make that happen, okay? We are actually mapping out the way that you would get there. I think one of the biggest mistakes that business owners make is to set these goals, but they have no idea how they actually need to get there at the end of the day. How many products, at what prices, at what profit margins make up that goal, right? How are you actually going to get there? And that is really important to be able to actually sit and plan out. And this part is probably going to take the longest, right? Because depending on the access that you have to your information, it means really going deep into the products or services or packages that you sell to figure out, okay, what could get me to that goal? And there may be multiple ways you could get there, but we need to at least model it out a little bit to get an idea for what that means, because that's actually then going to make it easier for you to do step number 4, which is to break it down by quarter. Okay, we want to break those goals down by quarter. An annual goal is great, but it's too long term to feel tangible. We need to be breaking it down by quarter. That's what they do in big corporate worlds, right? Because that's going to help you stay more accountable to the plan. When we don't meet our first quarter goal, right? If we're not really paying attention to it, it's easy to think like, oh, I'll just make it up in the rest of the year. And then it comes November, December, and all of a sudden we're 50% away or more from where we wanted to be. We can prevent that though by really breaking it down per quarter and figuring out, what does this mean on a per quarter basis? This is especially important if you have any kind of seasonal business. If you have a business where you bring in most of your money in the second or third quarters, you want to break that down so that you know exactly how much you need to bring in then in order to meet that annual goal, because it's going to be harder to bring that in December, right, for some businesses. That's why it's so critical to take our annual goals and divide it up. Either if your business isn't seasonal, maybe it's just divide by 4, and that's the products that you want to sell, the number of products you want to sell each quarter. Or perhaps if you are seasonal, you know that you're probably only going to bring in 10% of your money in the first quarter and the fourth quarter. And so 80% needs to come in the second and third, right? So you can model that out and give yourself goals and then make sure that you're going back to those goals, right? If we just make it and then put it in a drawer somewhere and we don't ever look back to see if we got anywhere near our goals, that's not super helpful. It might be fun, might be exciting. You might get to use your highlighters and your planners, but it's not going to really get us any closer to where we want to be. So the key is to put it somewhere. Maybe you put it up in your office. Maybe it's somewhere where you can see, where you have easy access to that, and you can see how close you are getting. And maybe we need to revisit it. I actually revisit my goals once a quarter because I do think it's important to understand, okay, if I didn't make it this quarter, then how am I going to, increase second quarter, right? The how is important, not just assuming we will, but if we don't hit a quarter, we need to figure out then, how are we going to make that up? What do we need to adjust in the future quarters so that we're not putting our annual goals at risk? And then the fifth and last thing that I think is really important to be thinking about when we are in these new year and fresh environments, we're doing planning for our business, whatever time of year it is. If we're doing a 1-year plan for our business, we also should be thinking about our 5-year plan. And I know that sometimes that just feels so far away. I mean, 5 years ago, I was really early stages in my business. I had no idea what I would be doing now, what I would be selling, what it would be looking like. Right? But I still had a 5-year plan. If I looked at it today, would it be completely different to what's going on? Probably, but it was still an important exercise to have one because it helped remind me of what my priorities were, what I really wanted in my business. The point is not to get it right? The point is not to say 5 years from now, we look back and we say, oh, look, I was dead on with my assumptions. Hopefully you're blowing them out of the water. The point is to see what you can possibly do, right? To model out what that would look like. If you go 5 years in the future, where would you want to be? How much would you want to be making? What would you want your profit to be? What type of business would you want to be running? If you are thinking about that, if you have that idea in your head, you're significantly statistically more likely to get to that goal or close to that goal than you would be if you had no vision at all. So the important thing, again, we can overanalyze, and this is one thing I work with my clients on all the time, is they want to get it right. And that is not what this is about, especially when we're going for the 5-year, right? The long term, it's about really being clear on what we want, and it's going to change. And every year you're probably going to have a new vision. But again, you're going to be a lot closer to that long-term vision if you set one to begin with. Even if it feels really fuzzy now, the closer you get, the more it's going to really come to fruition. The more it's really going to come into vision, and you're going to be able to see it. Right? So just make sure that you're doing some form, it doesn't have to be super detailed, but some form of longer term planning. And that's also going to help you make sure that you're investing appropriately now. You're investing your time, you're reinvesting your money back into your business. You're doing the things you need to do now that are in service to your ultimate 5-year goal. If we keep things too near focused, we're not going to make all the best decisions for our future selves, right? So we want to make good decisions for our near selves, but also really good decisions for our future selves. We have to keep that future us and those future goals in sight at all times. And that is going to help us. You're going to thank yourself. Your future self is going to thank your current self for just taking those actions to be thinking about you in the future. So this has gotten your juices flowing. You're ready to start planning for the year ahead. Go to jamietrull.com/annual planner in order to get that fully updated annual planning guide. And it's going to walk you through a lot of the steps we've talked about today. So we're going to talk about profitability, how much do we want to sell, looking back at last year, looking forward 5 years, all of those things are included within this annual planning guide. And it's really going to give you some clarity and focus on where you're going next, which honestly, I believe is some of the most important time you will spend on your business the whole next year, right? It is so critical to be doing this intentional planning. It's going to help you out so much, and you're going to have that to be able to fall back on. So thank you for joining me. I hope you found a lot of value here, and I hope you'll go grab that annual planning guide, and I will see you next time.